As a college mathematics professor with a PhD, Hari Pulapaka had his future all mapped out. But his love of food and a self-described antsy nature convinced him to enroll in culinary school at night. That bold step began a reinvention that would transform his life.
If you don't start, it's not going to happen. If you don't turn the key, the car is not starting, right? It's that simple. Thoughts are great, planning is great, conversations are great, but you have to have some version of action in place.
His advice for growth, purpose, and taking action on reinvention at any age. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Reinvention at Any Age. I'm Amy Sweezey, and I am passionate about helping you navigate through your reinvention. My guest today has reinvented himself not once, but repeatedly, and each time with deeper purpose. Hari Pulapaka began his professional life as a tenured mathematics professor with a PhD and a secure academic career. But in his mid-30s, he was pulled toward an unlikely second act. He enrolled in culinary school at night and graduated at the top of his class. That leap became a national success story. Alongside his wife, Dr. Jennifer Pulapaka, Hari co-founded Cress, a Zagat #1 rated restaurant that earned critical acclaim and made him a 4-time James Beard Awards semifinalist. Yet, even at the height of restaurant success, reinvention called again. In 2019, Hari stepped away from restaurant ownership to focus on a broader vision, rooted in education, wellness, and sustainability. Today, he leads Global Cooking School, serves as Director of Culinary Education at the Culinary Health Institute at Four Roots Farm, and designs immersive dining and learning experiences that blend global inspiration with social purpose. His work is guided by the belief that food can be a tool for both personal and societal transformation. Please welcome Hari Pulapaka to the podcast. Hello, Hari. Thanks so much for being here.
Greetings, Amy. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
It is so exciting to talk to you. You have such a fantastic story, and I know it will be such an inspiration to everyone who is listening today.
Thank you for those kind words. I look forward to the conversation, and it's wonderful to see you again.
Well, I want to start at the beginning. So first of all, just give us a little synopsis of your background. Where are you from? Where did you grow up? And how did you end up in Florida?
I'll make it as succinct as possible. So I was born and raised in the big metropolis, which is now referred to as Mumbai. When I was growing up, it was Bombay in India. And I was raised in a family of 5 sons. My parents were both working parents. My mother was a mathematics teacher at the local high school. My father worked for the airline. And, lower middle class type kind of upbringing. Good kid, good boy, good student, good son, all those things. I was very active in academics, also very active in athletics. And so I finished my bachelor's degree from the University of Mumbai at St. Xavier's College in 1986, I believe. And then I started feeling antsy, which is sort of the MO of my life. I started getting antsy about what's next. And I hung around for a year with really no purpose, to be honest with you. And I was just seeking for that. What would I do next? Yes, most people go on to maybe graduate studies or get a job. And none of those really spoke to me. And I suddenly decided that I wanted to travel halfway around the world, even though I'd never left the country before. And long story short, I got admitted to only 2 schools in the United States. And both of them only gave me admission without any kind of prospects of financial assistance. And for a lower middle class family like ours, that seemed like a dream completely out of our reach. But my family came through for me. We borrowed and scraped and all those sorts of things and appeased the visa folks at the local immigration office. And I was able to get admission and was able to travel to Virginia Tech in Virginia, basically in the early part of the winter. I'm from Mumbai, and if you know anything about the geography of Mumbai, the winter is modest at best. But I found myself in the throes of Blacksburg Valley in the middle of winter, and that was an interesting experience. I finished my master's degree at George Mason University after transferring from Virginia Tech because I was still without funding, and I was scraping for just hanging on and being able to live in this country and do what I needed to do to follow my dream of finishing a PhD in mathematics. That's why I came to this country. That was the promise I made to my family. And so, anyway, the stars kind of aligned a little bit. And then the University of Florida accepted my loan application that I sent out for PhD programs. Because when the applications take money, so that kind of required some careful analysis of what's the best chance of getting in. Not that the University of Florida was, but I had some connections through my advisor, and he put in a good word for me, and I got admitted to the PhD program in mathematics at UF in Gainesville, and I stayed there for 6 years. And that's how I landed in Florida. I came to Florida in 1989 to pursue my PhD in mathematics at the University of Florida.
So, and you mentioned that your mom was a math teacher. Was that what drew you to a mathematics career? Did you just love it? Obviously, you were good at it. It was being a math professor always your dream?
That's a good question. Was being a math professor all mastery? I don't think so. To be honest with you, I'm very much an in the moment kind of a person. I still am to this day. And so I don't think I ever really had a dream of what I wanted. I just wanted to make my family proud after kind of not doing much for a year, just hanging around without any purpose. And I realized how much was sacrificed I had made. So I was just trying to finish one task at a time. So my task coming here was to finish my PhD in mathematics. Well, after that, you got to do something or you got to go back, right? That's the way it goes. And so the only thing that I was really qualified to do was to teach. And so it turns out I had a little knack for teaching because I was passionate and I had been around academia my entire life, and mom being my supreme kind of role model. And so maybe in that way, I was sort of driven to the profession. But I don't think I was trying to be a teacher because of my mother. I don't think that's the case at all.
Well, and I know for people in academia, being tenured is a big deal. I mean, that's what you strive for once you reach professor status. So you were set. You had your life all figured out. You're in your mid 30s. What was it then that propelled you to return to school? I know you already mentioned you're a little antsy and that's kind of your thing. Was it that antsy feeling that made you return to culinary school of all things?
I think so. I think it was the antsiness, but it was also some sort of a sense of there's got to be more to life than just this. And so I didn't want to cruise in one profession doing only one thing. It seemed kind of unfulfilling to me. There seemed to be many more hours in the day than what that job requires. So I was antsy, but also I was intrigued professionally. I've always cooked. I've been around food my whole life. And when I came to this country for graduate school, as I mentioned, I had to learn how to cook. And I did all my cooking and did as best as I could, the 5 dishes that I knew how to make. And I kept them in rotation. So I didn't know anything about professional cooking. And I considered, actually, to be honest with you, I also considered going back to graduate school to get a PhD in some other field, just because, maybe in school of business or school of finance. And they rejected me. They rejected me for a PhD program because I think they understood that I was just doing it to check a box. I didn't really have a career purpose with that necessarily. And thank goodness for that, because if I had been admitted to another PhD program, that's what I would have been doing. I would have had multiple PhDs in multiple disciplines, and I don't know what I would have done with those things, but in a way, I'm so glad that didn't come through. So then one afternoon, I saw this sort of TV commercial, infomercials as they're called, for culinary school. And it immediately stopped me in my tracks. I'm like, wait a minute. This is completely different. And you mean I can just go here in Orlando and apply and maybe they'll admit me and they'll teach me how to cook? The idea of doing something so completely different is what really sealed the deal for me. And so I enrolled myself in culinary school, and here we are.
And did it take a while to make that decision to go back to school? Share a little bit about that decision making process.
That's a great question. So I can be deliberate, of course, in my decision making. But it's always calculated. So even if my decisions are seemingly spontaneous and instinctive, there's a lot of calculation happening in my little brain. So I didn't take very long to settle on this decision, to be honest with you. I saw the infomercial one afternoon. 2 days later, I had already made a phone call to the Cordon Bleu program in Orlando. And 2 weeks later, I'd enrolled myself in culinary school. It was that fast.
Wow. Well, I know firsthand because I've done it too. Trying to work full time and take college classes at the same time is a lot. It's not easy to juggle all of that, along with, of course, your family and your personal life. So, was there ever a point while you're doing this that you thought, I need to quit my teaching job and just focus on being a full time student? Or even the opposite? Did you think about giving up culinary school and just sticking with mathematics?
That's a great question. Did I have any second thoughts? Did I think about stopping this craziness in some way? Evidence shows that obviously I'm not that kind of a person. When I start something, I continue forward like a mad person. So I don't recall having a conscious thought of stopping any one thing. However, I'll be sure to say that the financial burden that I was undertaking did give me pause periodically. I was already in debt management. Don't ask me why. You can if you want. I was in debt management because of poor choices with credit cards and such with in graduate school, and frankly, I used all those credit cards to travel home to see my family. So anyway, I didn't have a way to pay those balances off, but my reasoning was because I need to spend time with my family. Anyway, so I found myself in credit card debt management as I enrolled in culinary school, and they were happy to give me a private unsecured loan at a very high interest to continue in my education. So the financial burden was the biggest stress that I faced. Not so much the hardship of trying to manage this crazy 8 o'clock in the morning till midnight shift kind of week that I had every single week for an entire year. So it was mostly the financial stress rather than the stress of finishing what I had begun.
Well, I think that's what happens with a lot of people. It's the way that we all have to reinvent ourselves because we don't have the luxury, or maybe just the need or the want to completely quit one thing and be able to reinvent ourselves overnight into something else. It's such a process. So how were you able to handle those in between times as you were going through the reinvention process, as you were dealing with the credit card issues and the debt management? What was it that kept you going and moving forward?
That's incredibly easy to answer for me. It was the joy of cooking. It was the joy of being around food. It's that simple. So all of the stress didn't seem relevant or important or of any measure when I found myself in the kitchen and I would cook and I would get huge compliments from my instructors and my colleagues. They're like, "Wow, you're really good. Your food always tastes so good." Having entered this field at such a late age in my life and to be accoladed that way by professionals was really uplifting for me. And I immediately latched on to what food can do for one, right? And so I think that's probably the main reason why I kept going because I realized early on that I have a knack for this and I have a talent for this, and clearly I have a passion for it.
And at what point then did you open the restaurant?
So I had to get some real world experience. So during my externship, which is a requirement you have in culinary school, I went to Toronto and worked at a really fine restaurant in downtown Toronto named Canoe. It's still there. It's one of the best restaurants in Canada. So I was grateful to get an opportunity to do my externship one summer there, all out of my own pocket. I got into my car. I drove to Toronto, stayed there for 3 months with my family there. I have a family in Canada, and then drove right back after I finished my externship. And then the following summer, I got basically a minimum wage job working for Princess Cruise Lines outside of Denali National Park at one of their lodges, and I spent three months working there in a really high stress, high speed environment. So those were my two real world experiences when it came to food. And so then in 2008, when I was faced with the prospect of, okay, now what? Do I just hang it all up and say, okay, it's got to pay my student loan and that's all there is to it? And maybe do an occasional private chef gig. An opportunity opened up in downtown DeLand, and my wife and I latched onto it with great support from my family and friends. I was able to move forward.
And for people who aren't familiar with Central Florida, DeLand is just a little bit north of Orlando in Central
Correct.
Florida.
Correct.
Now, I've heard you say that opening the restaurant wasn't just a career change for you, but it really changed your whole purpose and the way you think about not only food, but your impact in the world. So, can you share a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Absolutely. So, working for somebody else is great. I mean, as a teacher, you work for the university, you work for students. I have some experience with working for somebody. But when you have your own business, whether it be a restaurant or something else, it it's the phrase I like to use often: all the praise, all the criticism. Right? It's all on you. So you can't blame anybody else for shortcomings in terms of the creativity and what you're putting out day in and day out. And to some degree, you get to take some of that praise if and when it comes your way. So that sole proprietorship responsibility is something that I thrive on. I thrive on taking on huge amounts of kind of demands on myself, and just for whatever reason, doing my best to see how well I can do them all. So the restaurant ownership, as you can imagine, presented all of that on a plate. Forgive my pun. It was all there. All the stresses, all the uncertainties, all of the joy came with owning the restaurant. So I immediately put my face on the kitchen. I mean, I wasn't shy about that. I've never had a marketing team, and you might, if you know anything about me, you know that I'm constantly posting stuff, often with my face on things, because I could never afford a marketing team. And I said this to somebody recently. I said, it sounds like a weakness, but I hope it's not. I'm afraid of being irrelevant. I've always been afraid of being irrelevant. And so I think that's part of some of what drives me. And then this is the other thing that I think most of us have. I certainly have a great fear of failure. And so maybe that comes from something in my childhood and upbringing. I don't know. But I'm not suggesting that I always succeed, but I do my best because I'm afraid of failing.
Well, I don't think you're alone in that. I think a lot of people are. And of course, we see all the memes on the internet that say, failure isn't really failure. It's just pick yourself up and go on to the next thing. And, it helps make you stronger.
Absolutely.
And obviously, you don't do anything small because not only did you just open a restaurant, but you were recognized by Zagat and the James Beard Foundation multiple times. So, I mean, that's a big deal. Now you have two hugely successful careers operating simultaneously. So, what was it then that pushed you to sell the restaurant and then focus on culinary education?
I'm a realist as well. So I knew that nothing is forever. And so, of course, I sustained this frenetic life for, 12 years almost of having a restaurant and also teaching full time in a tenured position. And doing all the cooking, I might add, and running to the grocery store and running to the farm. It's just me, mostly just me. So that takes time and takes a lot of energy and takes time. Anyway, I knew that was not sustainable, but I didn't know how to hand that off. I, I, I guess maybe that comes from being a teacher. In the teacher, I'm my own boss in the classroom. And so I've never had a graduate assistant. I've never had a teaching assistant. I'm at a small school, a private school. People pay a lot of money to come to the school that I teach at because they get that one-on-one experience with the professor. And so I've never had the luxury of being able to pass on even the simplest of tasks sometime to somebody else. And so I knew that if that was to continue, it was impossible. It was going to be impossible. And then so that's probably the main reason why I decided in 2017, 2 years prior to letting go of the restaurant, to open up this side entity, business entity at least, called the Global Cooking School. I knew that a day would come when I would continue with my love and passion for food, but yet leverage my long-standing experience with education and being the teacher that I've been and being the teacher's son that I've been. So I knew that cooking and teaching had to come together in a reasonable way once the restaurant would no longer be front center. But that's really what prompted me to say, we have to let this go and we have to continue what we were doing in a different way, in a way that makes sense, in a way that's sustainable, that makes room for growth rather than saying we're scaling back.
And throughout your journey, you obviously have had long hours, steep learning curves, switching from one career to another. What would you say most shaped your reinventions, especially during those times that the path forward may not have seemed totally clear?
So I would say it's always been a combination of the criticism and the praise. It's that simple, So what keeps you going? If it's all praise, you have to know that it's not reasonable. Nobody gets praise all the time. And when it's criticism, if it's good criticism, especially from people you respect, then it must give you pause. And so I think it's always been a combination, whether it's in the classroom with my course evaluations or it's in the restaurant or food setting where a guest goes, that's not your best effort. That's like, wait a minute. Am I slipping? Am I losing it? So that, that again, that need to be relevant kind of kicks in. and then you find a way to grind through those processes, I think. So for me, it's been an honest combination of fair and honest criticism in combination with, fair and honest praise.
Well, you mentioned that you're afraid to fail, but were there times that you did fail? And
Oh my gosh.
how important was that? Were those experiences to your eventual success?
I would not be exaggerating if I told you I think I fail every day, right? Who doesn't? I think we all fail in all small ways every single day, whether you're 5 minutes late to a meeting or you weren't able to do something on your task list, or you did something with a little bit less effort and passion than you perhaps could have, or the outcome of what you did is not quite as good as it can be, etc., etc. So may not have to be, we don't necessarily have to call those things failures, but we didn't quite get where we wanted to be. And so that happens every day. That happens every single day. And when you combine that with the need to succeed, the need to be relevant, and the fear of failure, I think it moves you in a way that's always kind of like, okay, that's no problem. Pick yourself up. You know you can do better. You know where you've been. It's not like this was 10 years ago that you accomplished that same task slightly better. You did this yesterday. Today it didn't quite work out. So clearly you're able to do it. That common sense approach, I think, keeps me going.
Well, and you've managed to sort of meld your two careers together, the education and the cooking, in a couple of different ways. And I know that you serve as the director of culinary education at Four Roots Farm here in Central Florida. And you mentioned you lead those immersive culinary classes. It all kind of goes to the point that I often try to make about reinvention, that it's not necessarily about leaving something behind. But when you reinvent yourself, it's really more about just expanding who you are and drawing from your past experiences and your skills in order to create something new and rewarding. So, would you agree that that's kind of where you're at with your reinventions?
Absolutely, I agree 100%. If I could add something to that, I would also say that nothing is forever, as I've already mentioned. But you cannot keep accumulating things in life. Something has to be let go. You have to make room for growth, right? A lot of people find themselves in the trap of, when we're younger or we have certain capacities, we tend to take on, take on, take on, and we've all been there. And it seems like an endless supply of energy and enthusiasm and ability. But that's not the case. It's certainly not the case. So I think it's relevant and important to be mindful and to be aware of one's capacity at any given moment. And so I've learned over time, and I think I'm getting better and better at this, is to make room for what the things I really care about. And so I am no longer afraid of saying no when it's something that either doesn't speak to me or something that I know I can't do as well as I would like to. In fact, it's just recently I let go of an event that I co-hosted for 2 years in a row, a large festival just north of where we are. And I wrote to the organizers right away, immediately after the second one. I said, next year is different. There are a lot of things happening in my life. I'm not sure I can give this responsibility the time that it deserves. I've been able to do it for 2 years, but I don't think I can do it. So I made that decision early. I gave them time to find somebody else. I think they're doing a great job moving forward. So I think those kinds of small decisions are important if one is to keep growing and one is to keep finding ways of reinventing themselves for the better. You have to make room for growth. You can't just keep adding.
Well, I'm glad you did not say no to this podcast.
Oh my gosh. When's the next one?
Yay. I know you have a lot of global firsthand knowledge, being from India, living in Canada, all over the US. You've traveled, you've learned, you've cooked. How have all of those cross-cultural experiences shaped your reinventions, or have they?
Absolutely, they absolutely have. I would hope this is not a controversial statement, but I really do consider myself a citizen of the world. I'm a global citizen, I think, because to me, humanity is sort of universal. We have a lot more in common than we don't, as that's clearly evidenced by science and by sociology and by kind of common sense. And so I think for me, it's easier for me to live as a citizen of the world. I understand I don't have a passport that says citizen of the world. I get that. I get the logistics of function and going through life and systems and bureaucracies. But in terms of outlook and in terms of existence, I consider myself as a global citizen. And for that, what that means to me is I'm open. I allow myself to be open to all sorts of things that are very different from maybe something I'm used to myself. And in the process, it has, over time, for me at least, given me all sorts of opportunities and even inspiration to grow myself. And so I think the openness, opening one's mind, opening one's outlook is supremely important, I think. One can do that in small settings. I would urge anyone to do that in any setting that they're comfortable in. So if you want to just open yourself up in the little town that you live in, do so, but do it freely. If you want to go beyond your little town to as far as I've gone, that's the option one has. So quick answer is yes, and I think it's been. I don't think I would be here today if I wasn't like that. To be honest with you.
Throughout your reinventions, how important has your village been? Your tribe, your posse, your friends, family, the people who surround you and support you?
The support structure that one has is supremely important. When we were opening the restaurant, I was sort of faced at a dead end. I certainly didn't have the finances. My family came through for me in a way that kind of made it all work. After that, my set of friends who used to come to my private dinners are the ones who first came to the restaurant, and they started spreading the word, and that kind of helped me out. So, yes, anyone who says they're self made is a little delusional, in my opinion. Forgive the strong phrase. No one is really self-made. I mean, we depend on breaks. We depend on others lifting us. We depend on opportunities. We depend on collaborations. So the tribe, as you call it, is supremely important because no one does anything by themselves. Really, you don't. You can have thoughts by yourself, perhaps. Maybe that's the extent of it. But beyond that, action requires some assistance, usually. Things have to fall in place, and they don't magically fall in place from the heavens always. They fall in place because there are people around you, or objects around you, or circumstances around you that have kind of made the environment what it is so that you can move forward in the way you do. And so I'm a firm believer that being self-made it sounds good, but it's not really possible.
And did you ever have a mentor through any of your reinventions?
Yes, silently or now in memory, my mother.
Mm.
Absolutely. My mother has been the matriarch of our family, lived to be 93 years old. We lost her a few years ago. But sh- she was the rock. I don't want to diminish the contributions of my father, even in the slightest. Okay, they were supreme. Without my father, I would be a completely different person. As I cook like my father, for example, if that makes sense. So if I cook like my father, clearly he's been extremely instrumental in my life. But in terms of the strength and the dedication and the perseverance, which I think I have, that comes, I think, from my mother. She survived a lot and she made herself who she became. In fact, to this day, I have a message on a reminder on my phone at 7 a.m. every single morning to call. It says, call mommy. And that's going to stay on my phone until eternity, right? Because why not?
You're also an author with several books published and another on the way, I understand. So tell me about your reinvention into the world of book writing.
Thank you. As a mathematician, we're expected, and I've written a few research papers in my life, and that's how you get tenure, and that's how you get professional accolades and progression. So when I first, in the thick of the restaurant years, people were always asking me for recipes. Hey, how do you do that? I come here like twice a month just to eat that. Can you help me make that? And I would freely share those recipes in my newsletters. I would put them on social media. I would even do free cooking demos outside the restaurant on Saturday mornings just for the fun of it, because that's the teacher in me. And there are no secrets in food, in my opinion. And then it suddenly made sense. Somebody said, why don't you write about you? Like we're having this conversation. You seem to have a fairly interesting life story. Why don't you write about that? So the first idea was to write sort of a memoir. And then I thought to myself, well, nobody outside of our little circles knows who I am. So why would anybody be interested in my memoir? So the first book that I wrote was basically a combination of a memoir and then a cookbook. Uh, it, by many measures, poorly written, but from the heart, full of typos because I didn't take the time to hire an editor. Uh, but it made its way in hard copy, sold about 1,000 copies in my little network, and it was successful by all measures of the imagination. And so that's how I started my book writing in 2015. So I think that ability to kind of express oneself is the academic in me, but then to express myself about a field that I care so deeply about, which is food, is extremely gratifying. So it's become addictive now, and I'm grateful for the opportunities to be published in a formal way. The last book my wife and I published was a heart healthy plant-based cookbook. And the next one is going to be just my authorship. It's going to come out sometime soon.
So, what's next for you? Do you find that your past reinventions have sort of empowered you or given you courage to continue reinventing yourself?
Absolutely. I mean, so it's, if I have, maybe I haven't pointed this out. It's really important to be sound in mind and sound in health, right? So I've been grateful and blessed that my health is generally good, and my mind has been generally clear. So to be able to think of reinvention or to move forward or to continue on a path of exploration and learning and then contribution, it's important to have those aspects. And some of us are not always, they don't have the luxury of that. Some folks, maybe have limitations with what they can do with mind and or body. Fortunately, I have not faced that hardship yet. So I'm still in sound shape physically and mentally. And so I'm continuing down this path of reinventing myself. I'm not sure if you knew this, but this is my final semester as a mathematics professor.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. I have taken on voluntary retirement as a mathematics professor. So this is exactly like the restaurant for me now. I'm letting go of the restaurant. In this case, I'm letting go of the mathematics position after one more semester so that I can make room for what I really want to do moving forward, which is immerse myself in the world of food and just blow it up with what I know it can do for the world.
Gives me chills. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you.
What is your advice to others who may be in a long-term, even fulfilling career, but something is tugging at them to try something new, to make room for something new, go back to school, pursue a reinvention of their own?
My simple advice, it seems almost too simple and maybe even hopefully not condescending, is you got to start. If you don't start, it's not going to happen. If you don't turn the key, the car is not starting, right? It's that simple. So you have to start. Thoughts are great. Planning is great. Conversations are great. But you have to have some version of action in place. You have to start something. So if you want to become a chef, say, make a meal for friends and get fussy with it. Make a meal for friends. Put some pressure on yourself. See how you do. Get some feedback. It's that simple. If you want to open a business, okay, don't open a business without much experience necessarily. However, do something that your business would do and see how that goes. Do something actionable and tangible. So it sounds simple, but you have to have some action, and then you leverage, you assess, you see how that's going, learn, be open to receive criticism. It's going to come whether you like it or not. Be open to receive praise. Hopefully it's going to come as well. And put it all in perspective and keep building on that momentum of action. Because with action comes the opportunity for growth and reinvention. Without action, there's no reinvention.
Chef Hari, thank you so much for being here. We could talk to you all day, but we're getting close to being out of time. Thank you for being a guest. If people want to know more about you, if they want to get your cookbooks, where can they find you or follow you?
Thank you for having me. Very easily, I'm found through globalcookingschool.com. It's all one word, globalcookingschool.com.
Well, I know your story of reinvention, several reinventions, will inspire so many others. So Hari Pulapaka, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Yemi. Congratulations to you as well.
So what about you? Were you inspired by this story? Chef Hari Pulapaka's journey reminds us that reinvention isn't about abandoning who you were. It's about expanding who you are and how you serve. And reinvention doesn't belong to just one specific age or stage of life. It's always available. You don't need a perfect plan or complete certainty to begin. You just need a willingness to start, to take one small step, even if the path ahead isn't fully mapped out. Reinvention isn't about erasing your past. It's about following your curiosity, listening to what keeps calling you, and choosing action over hesitation. If there's something you've been thinking about, a shift you've been delaying, a passion you've been holding quietly, let this be your reminder. Turn the key. Start where you are. Take the first step. Your next chapter may be closer than you think. If you've missed any episodes of this podcast, I invite you to search for Reinvention at Any Age and join me on the journey to reinvention.